If I ask you to describe the ending to Dead Rising 3, it would likely go like this. Nick confronts Gary, learns that he's Rhonda's ex, fixes Rhonda up, reunites them, gets Annie to the plane, kills Red, meets Chuck, sticks around to stop Hemlock's genuinely evil plans.
Fuck you!
If I ask you to describe the alternate endings, most would go, wait, Dead Rising 3 has alternate endings? Indeed, Dead Rising 3 has 2 optional bad endings the player can engage in. The one most players know about is the ending where you kill Gary instead of reuniting him with Rhonda, and the story continues as normal until you defeat Red. The plane stalls and Nick's crew are killed by the zombies, effectively screwing the player over through Ending C. The less known is Ending D, which involves the player going straight to the plane to abandon everyone before going to the karaoke bar, only for everyone to show up out of nowhere and instead abandon Nick. But thanks to the YouTube channel Throwing Out Rocks, we know of an unused third bad ending. This one would have also taken place right after the player defeated Red.
Thanks for saving me, but I hear you've been a real shithead around town. I hear you've been hurting people, Nick. Innocent people.
Whoa. Hey, wait a second. All right, listen, I'm special. And I'm sorry, you guys, now I just didn't have time to...
Oh, so you're Mr. Special, aren't you? Is that it?
Seriously, though, I really am special.
What, you don't think that we're special?
I was just having a little fun now. Come on, guys.
Yeah, look at me, Mr. Number 12. I can kill whoever I want. I'm a murderer.
Hey, hang on. I really need to escape, all right?
Oh, you're gonna escape all right. Straight to that big safe house in the sky.
Die! Get him!
This is Ending X. It's unpolished, but fully animated and voice acted, hinting it was cut late in the game's development. It's presumed Nick would have had to kill innocent survivors while going for the canon ending, although it's not clear if Gary's survival matters here, and it's not clear how many survivors would have had to have been killed. Of course, there's a lot that's not clear about this ending, and for this video, I plan to do my best to explain everything observable about this ending, starting with why. Why would an ending like this even exist? To answer this, we need to start with Dead Rising 1's endings. It's quite fitting, as the multiple endings in both Dead Rising 1 and 3 don't line up very well. In Dead Rising 1, Carlito's orphan time bombs go off in a couple days, while in the canon ending, this magically never happens. But that's because the endings in Dead Rising 1 are not meant to show plausible alternate timelines, but are meant to encourage the player to go through the storyline in its entirety next time. Carlito's orphan plan is only revealed during overtime mode, so having that plan succeed in endings B and D ensures that no matter when the player fails the case files, they will know that there's more to the story than what they currently understand. The same is true in Dead Rising 2, just with a little more consistency. Ending C has Chuck shot to death by someone off-screen to indicate a traitor. Ending D has the military ambush Chuck before being stopped by something with green mist, to foreshadow the gas zombies, and Ending F has Chuck getting eaten alive by zombies both to foreshadow the safe house breach, while reinforcing that Katie is the only thing keeping Chuck going. Dead Rising 3 can't quite do that, though. In the first 2 games, your escape from the location is the cause of the timer, completely independent of the plot. In Dead Rising 3, escape is the backbone of the entire plot, so you can't really fail the plot and still have a hope of escape without either rewriting the whole story or making alternate story missions for any possible failure. So instead, the alternate endings are punishments for psychopathic behavior, with the endings getting lower in rank the worse Nick behaves. Ending C is the tamest, as Nick simply kills Gary to save Annie, and even feels bad it came to that.
Gary, why'd you have to take it this far?
The only major change is that Chuck doesn't show up with Gary and Rhonda. The plane stalling is just bad luck. Ending D punishes Nick for trying to leave everyone behind, with him being the only one left to die. And Ending X? Well, if the player wants to kill innocent survivors, they will eagerly return the favor, and Annie isn't interested in dating a murderer. There's extra attention to detail with Ending X. The survivors that turn on Nick are characters Nick never actually can side with. Joey doesn't tag along with Nick in favor of making a porno with zombies, while Kyla's just a conspiracy nutter who shoos Nick off when he doesn't believe her theory that aliens are behind the outbreak. Hank is just a redneck who blows himself up on the highway. And finally, there's Kent and Bernard, two hostile survivors. The latter is an unused character. I did a video on his cut mission for those interested. Big D and Phil were originally meant to be characters Nick could side with over their hostages, based on their unused posse member dialogue and unused mission dialogue of Nick killing their victims. Kent and Bernard have no such references, so not only are two of the survivors who take offense to Nick's out-of-character murdering themselves violent monsters, but they're the only two Nick cannot even side with in the base game. On top of that, there's the dialogue. Annie's lines are far cornier than anything else in the main game, or Dead Rising as a series, Chuck's gallows dad humor included. And it's delivered with a level of awkwardness not found anywhere else in the game, except for ending D, right down to Nick defending himself both times by saying he was just having a little fun.
Later, bitches. It's every man for himself. Wait a second. I was just having a little fun. I'm sorry, you guys. I was just having a little fun now. Come on, guys.
Yeah, look at me, Mr. Number 12. I can kill whoever I want. I'm a murderer.
From making the player think they're earning the true ending at first, to the most illogical survivors to use in this scene, to dialogue and delivery that simply doesn't happen by accident, I'd bet good money this ending was deliberately unsatisfying to really twist the knife in as hard as possible. Okay, so Ending X was the best joke Capcom Vancouver never told. Why was something that clearly had so much thought and effort put into it removed? Probably because most survivors don't defect anymore. Only 6 survivors in Dead Rising 3 can become hostile to Nick through his actions. Either of the 2 neighbors from Love Thy Neighbor can become hostile if Nick decides to end their feud by killing one of them. Jason will elect to feed Nick, or any survivor he has with him, to his undead family, should Ramos refuse to bring him meat for them. Big D is programmed to defect after taking the slightest amount of friendly fire damage, and as will Kenny after his boss fight. As an aside, Kenny is the only survivor who properly defects, instead of becoming a hostile enemy with a health bar. And, of course, there's Gary.
Jim, I'm gonna have to punch your lights out.
The rest? Attack them as much as you want. They'll complain, but never defect. They have unused lines for when they would defect, and in fact the mechanic is still functional, but Nick can't hurt survivors, so it never triggers. At first I thought it was the ranged weapons with mass crowd control, making it too easy to accidentally hit your survivors. But that's actually pretty rare to happen during gameplay. If you're using the split shot or the elemental staff, you're going to be walking forward into the horde, and your survivors will usually be behind you, so they're not going to be getting hit. It's only with AoE attacks where that's a concern, which has always been the case for the series. No, it's the use of vehicles that I think was the real issue. With how easy it is to run over a survivor because the car can't brake fast enough, or bump into the survivor as you try to angle the car better for them to get to the open seat faster, survivors defecting from too much abuse would have certainly been more common in this game than previous ones, to the point where most people probably wouldn't use the survivors just to keep them alive. And then there are zombie grapples and bosses. How many times in the Dead Rising series do you accidentally hit a survivor you're trying to save from a zombie grapple? How much worse would that get in 3 with the high zombie count? Or, what if you try to attack a boss while you have posse members around? A likely outcome, since posse members were designed to help with bosses, resulting in them literally running into your attacks. I can see a version of Dead Rising 3 where posse members defect way too easily if the players ever try to use them for any of their intended purposes. Likely for all of these reasons, survivors no longer take friendly fire, and therefore cannot defect. In short, I think survivor defection was already posing trouble for making the posse members useful, and they didn't want a player to lock themselves out of the true ending because they were too careless trying to engage in one of the new features. We also don't know how many survivors would have to die by Nick's hands to earn the ending. A lot of people assume Nick would have had to go out of his way to kill all of them, but for all we know, it could have been as low as 10 or 15 friendly survivors. And once you cross that threshold, you're locked into Ending X. And that's also assuming the game doesn't count abandoning stranded survivors as killing innocent survivors as well. This would be the kind of experience that, if triggered by accident, would make someone swear off a game. Especially if they played Nightmare Mode and got told to restart from scratch. And finally, Bernard was removed from the game. Some of his assets are still there, but he's not just unused. Most of his coding space was replaced with Big D, which is why he looks so chunky in the cutscene. So Ending X now has a character looking really awkward in ways that wasn't intended, in a more unfinished kind of awkward. I don't know the order of events here. Maybe they were already backing away from survivor defection, and Bernard's removal was the nail in the coffin. Or maybe Bernard's removal predates any changes to this system, and the idea of having to reanimate Ending X all over got them to reconsider the concept. I just don't know. I do think a good implementation of Ending X would have been a nice addition to Dead Rising 3, if for no other reason than to complete the idea of the alternate endings being punishment for the player's unprovoked, awful, psychotic behavior. Ideally, defection would only occur if you attack survivors before they join you, allowing posse members to engage in the reckless behavior they honestly need to be a viable asset in combat. But hindsight's 2020, in the midst of development, even late-stage development, taking the better safe than sorry approach is certainly understandable to avoid players locking themselves out of the true ending for what is supposed to be completely optional side content. And given how negative reviews of this game hate almost every single divergence from the first game, then in hindsight this would have just been another thing to complain about.
I used to base jump. Okay, can you believe that? I like the rush, but now I can't handle this.
Bro, a man a glue can do to the gun shop on the roof. Buy me a jumper.